Hey, tolerators. This is To All the Men I've Tolerated Before with your host, Natalie Katona.
And Dina Al-Kazim.
On this podcast, Dina and I explore some of the impactful relationships we've had with men. We then thank them for the lessons they gave us and leave them with some positive manifestations we hope for their future. I'm excited that you're here with us today because we have one of my dearest and most talented friends on for a guest.
You talked me up a little too much, I think.
Nope, you are one of my most talented and closest friends. We're not doing anything but accepting that. Amber Mendenhall, did I say your last name right? I also meant to clear that. Is a costume historian who runs her own business, Virgil's Fine Goods. Her shop contains historical sewing patterns, kits, haberdashery, fabric, and accessories for reenactors and costumers. All of those items are handmade by her, hence her being one of my immensely talented friends.
Honestly impressive. That's a huge list of things.
Right. I made 3 bracelets today. So.
I mean, it's a good thing. It's nice to be creative, you know.
She is also a co-host of a YouTube series called Costumoms and is known to teach workshops on historical costuming. She does all of this while raising 2 small children and being a married person. My personal love for Amber happened at an art museum the moment I met her when someone else in the group let it slip she had worked on hats for the Broadway show Anastasia.
That's so
we
cool.
both share a passionate love and interest in the Romanoff family. My friend, Amber. Woo!
Oh, thank you. That was so lengthy.
It was very lengthy.
You deserve your moment, Amber. Take it.
Asking. Oh.
I realized as I got into it that I had been talking for a while.
It felt like a while, but it was actually only like 2 minutes, if that.
Oh. Yeah,
that's a long time in podcast time, though.
It truly is. People are going to be like, okay, Natalie, we get it. You're in love with her. All right.
What are we
so,
talking
Amber,
about?
Yeah.
My first question. Can you tell us a little bit more about your business and just how you got started in this historical costuming world?
I can attempt to. Yeah, it started out actually because of a boy. Way back when, in my 13th year, I had a crush on a guy who was into Civil War reenacting, and my mom and I had always loved like historical films and things, and movies and films, obviously. I meant books. That's what I meant. And so like we had fallen in love with that whole thing. Of course, it's the romanticized versions of history that you're seeing, but at 13, I was like, "Hey, Mom, can I put my babysitting money toward getting some costumes?" And so she was like, "Yeah, sure, like if that's what you want." And so Mom set me up with a wonderful seamstress. And we lived in Southeast Ohio, which there's not much there, and in Athens, Ohio, but just outside of Athens, there's a woman who is so talented. She has a TV series, I think, now.
What?
But yeah, her name is Mary Rediger. She's amazing. She can do mind-boggling things with fabric. But anyway, so that kind of set me on this path of extreme research, at least, with the historical clothing and fashion. And then after that, when I went to college, I started out as a piano major and quickly decided after a year that practicing 4 to 8 hours a day is not my jam. No pun intended there, but anyway, and I jumped ship and I made my own degree. And the goal was to work at Colonial Williamsburg. That didn't happen. But other than, getting an apprenticeship there, which I did an internship, and later on I wasn't able to take any jobs that came my way from Colonial Williamsburg because I had all these other things going on, including an ex-husband at that time, that, I ended up working at nonprofits and just continued learning and researching, and decided, sometimes I think foolishly, to create my own business, which has its own very long saga that I could tell you all about on how I really landed here. But yeah, now I've got a business, and I launched my an official website this year, which has been really exciting, and it's opened up a lot of avenues.
So while I was writing my questions, I realized that I didn't know the answer to this one. And you mentioned your ex-husband. Have you ever been running your business while single, or has it always been a day job within the costuming or the nonprofit world, and the business came later when you felt like more secure or something like that?
The reason that in circumstances why I jumped into self-employment, which is a scary place to be, was actually after I had gotten married the second time.
Okay.
So, when I was married to my ex-husband, we got married in college, our victory year in college. And then, we divorced shortly after, and I worked at a Habitat for Humanity. And so I was there for a couple years, and after a while, a friend of mine did hats and things, and she did a lot of Broadway shows, opera and whatnot. We did a lot of ballet, and I would help her out here and there because I am really good at hats and I'm really good at hand stitching. And so in millinery, that's a lot of it, is you've got to be able to use your hands in really weird ways to get into the weird nook and crannies of the bonnets and whatever you're making. And at the time, it seemed very lucrative for us to go into business together. And, through twists and turns, I thought that I'd be able to launch my business alongside of it and have both of those things running at the same time. And it ended up being that the other thing fell away, and what I was good at ended up being the thing that I stuck with. But I didn't officially launch it actually until I was pregnant.
Oh, God.
So, yeah. Bad timing. I do not, what's the word? Recommend. Yeah, I kept thinking guarantee, and I was like, that is the wrong word. But yeah, it's been very difficult, but we'll see in the next couple years if it pays off.
I can't imagine, I have never been a pregnant person, but I cannot imagine, being pregnant just seems like it sucks enough most of the time. So, trying to start a business during that.
Yeah.
That's a hell. That's a personal hell, I feel like.
Well, yeah, and just because I know personally, Amber didn't have a great first, it was, would you classify it like a difficult pregnancy, or
I had a difficult time with the pregnancy. Yeah. So the pregnancy itself was not problematic. There weren't a whole lot of issues other than I later developed mild hypertension.
Okay.
But what ended up happening was that I was so not in it. I didn't, after we got pregnant, so she was my second pregnancy, my first daughter.
Okay.
I was happy that I was pregnant. We'd planned to be pregnant. So I felt really shitty, honestly, to be in this shitty headspace, because all I could think of is, now people are going to look at me when I'm eating sushi, and they're going to think, oh, that pregnant lady shouldn't be eating that sushi. And so, I was very self-conscious of people, where I'd never been before, of people watching me, of people wanting to be around me, of people touching my belly, which didn't happen all that much. Oh, but that, coupled with being uncomfortable and not being able to do my regular day-to-day activities, I'm not supposed to be a pregnant person. And my second full-term pregnancy was definitely the same way. Well, worse. That one I actually did have issues with, but...
Well, plus you were also pregnant during the Great Pandemic.
No, I had her right before it.
Oh, that's right. You had her right before. That's right.
So she was born end of February, and 3 weeks later, the world was on lockdown.
People, talk about how kids that were born, around the pandemic, haven't seen normal things like other kids. Was that the same way for your second child?
Yes. So actually, she's only been to the grocery store twice in her life. And she's only been to restaurants twice, and today was one of those days. And it's so sad and cute, actually, to see her so excited to see other people.
Aww.
Because she sees us, occasionally she sees my parents, and we had a friend over today, and we were able to go and do things, and she's like, hi, all the time, so just cute. Waving at people, and she's very cute, but at the same time, it's just like, oh my gosh, I feel so bad for you.
Right, exactly.
Well, and honestly, for, like, how that could have swung in the opposite direction to where she could have, like, high people or stranger anxiety. Like, when I got to meet her the first time, I was so taken aback by just how personable and open she is to everyone.
She's touch-starved, basically.
Yeah, and she's definitely a kid that requires physical touch. So that could be it, that she just wants to be around people, so... But yeah, it's been an interesting experience having a business through a pandemic and having kids through it and trying to juggle it all and dealing with the shit that your husband gives you. And it's just like... And I want to preface this with, like, I am going to talk a little bit of shit because I've been dealing with stupid men for a while. And not all men are dumb. Not all men. Not all men.
Yep.
But everybody, every person... gets on your nerves if you live with them. So we're going to talk about that.
Heck yeah.
We sure are. One of the things that I'm always in awe of is how you juggle your schedule. Mm-hmm. Like, can you talk a little bit about how your daytime and your nighttime works?
Yes. Actually, I have my schedule here.
Oh, you have a literal schedule.
Yes, I do. So the only way that, well, okay, let's go back a little bit. I am, like, a hyper-productive person, and I feel bad sometimes for people that want to be more productive, and they sometimes see what I do and think, oh my gosh, she's able to do all of these things, why can't I? Mm-hmm. And it's like, I get depressed if I don't do things, and my mind spirals out of control if I don't have something to focus on. I think I've not been diagnosed, but I really think that I have some form of ADHD because I cannot live without focusing on something. Anyway, that's developed a ton of hobbies that I don't need, but I do love. And so I've got all these things, cogs in the wheel, things happening all the time. That means that I have to have a schedule if I want to be productive at all. Yeah, actually, I get, like, my favorite schedules are from Marshall's. But yeah, on Sunday nights I go through and I just kind of plan out my week. And, like, that's the micro scheduling. But, like, at the beginning of the year, in order to make sure that I had my whole year kind of figured out, I actually went through month by month and I decided, like, what goals that I wanted on a separate piece of paper. And then I figured out what months those might fall in. And these are all loose schedules. Nothing has to be done, but it's something that I can work toward.
Yeah.
And then after I got the month things down, I go through and I put in important dates in my schedule. And then every week, which I'm showing you guys, every week I go through. So this was Monday. Mondays are always big days. But yeah, I just put all the things that I hope that I can get done, including gardening, including canning, whatever I'm doing. And yeah.
Wow.
I get probably 40% done of what's on my to-do list.
And is it like, so Natalie, so there's like a daytime and a nighttime situation. Like, what's that about?
So I don't sleep very much. And that's some of it too. Like, a lot of people sleep, and I'm envious of that. Because I would love to be able to recharge and sleep. But I usually go to bed at about anywhere from 2 to 4 and wake up at 8.
Oh!
And if my... oh my gosh, your face. If my husband is here in the morning, he will watch them until I wake up. So I am fortunate that those days I get to recoup some sleep. But my natural tendency is to go to bed really late and wake up at noon. That's what I want. That's what my body wants to do. And I've just learned to live on sleep deprivation. So yeah, during the day, if it's me watching the girls' day, we do normal things. I clean the house. I do the domestic duties as much as I can. And then when I put everybody to bed, that's when I go to work. And 2 days a week, my husband watches the girls so I can work during the daytime. And I work for most of it, but a lot of times, there's house things that need done. I need to get groceries. I've got to go to the doctor. And I make sure that I schedule massages and chiropractic for myself. Yeah. Because I do so much where I'm hunched over. I do a lot of computer work. I do a lot of sewing work. So all of those things get lumped in, and it means that I have less time to work. And that's why working at night is essential. So I work.
Do you, live on coffee? What?
I don't. Actually, I can't have coffee.
Do you have any sort of caffeine?
No. I mean, I have decaf coffees because that's all my heart can take. Okay. It literally feels like it's going to pound out of my chest if I have real coffee, which is sad. But yeah, I basically live off of the drive to get shit done.
I need a vacation from you talking about this. From you just going through how little sleep you got. I literally could not function. I couldn't.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't early on after I just had the baby. I was a zombie. I had early postpartum depression, and that paired with pandemic depression was really crappy. Yeah. So, it seems like the light is coming. I think I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, but yeah, sleep-wise, I'm happy if I get more than 5 hours.
Yeah.
So, it's not easy.
Yeah.
But I mean, the business is going well right now. Oops. I just actually, one of the things that's new that I've just ordered and I about threw up afterwards is fabric. So I'm starting to design fabric. Ooh. And I just sent the $4,000 check off to the manufacturer.
Wow. That's so exciting though.
But yeah, finding what's been the hardest part is finding what's the most passive income you can accumulate. Because at the beginning, I was making stuff for people.
Right.
And that's a very different, very manual, hourly thing. And nobody wants to pay what you're worth per hour.
Yeah.
So
no.
after a while, it was like, well, this, though I'm good at it, I would like to do other things that make me money.
Yeah.
So.
I know when we were under quarantine, you and I had talked about how patterns and things like that were really starting to be more of a passive income for you.
Yeah.
Do you find work like that is also easier to juggle with home life and kids and husbands and things like that?
And making the patterns is nice because it's a quicker return than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
It is because I can only work, at night or a couple days a week if I'm lucky. After they're done, they're done. And I have them available as digital downloads too on my Etsy. So those have no overhead whatsoever. That's literally free money.
Right.
And so that's really nice. And then there's the paper patterns, which I do have to pay for the printing costs and shipping, which shipping costs are really high right now. But people still want paper patterns so they don't have to print them out themselves. And after that happened, that's when I saw a huge jump in my trajectory. Because before it was very meh.
Yeah.
Maybe this will never work out, but we'll just ride this as long as I can. And now I'm seeing actual returns, which is nice. Yeah. But it took almost 4 years of just trying things.
Wow. That's impressive though.
And it never would have worked if I didn't have a partner that made money. That allowed me to be able to stay home in order to do it. Because I don't think that on 3 or 4 hours, or not 3 or 4, but 4 to 5 hours of sleep, generally, I don't think that I would be able to function at a job, a day job, doing that. So yeah.
How does he feel about your, your business and all that?
I'm not quite sure. I know that at the beginning, when we started the whole working for Broadway and stuff, there were a lot of accolades too with that. My partner works on these things, and she sent things to the Met, and she did this, and it's at that point, when you're making $3,000 to $6,000 a hat, that's pretty impressive, right?
Right.
But now when I make something that takes almost the same amount of time and people are balking at $300,
Mm-hmm.
it just makes it not as impressive. So at the beginning when I made the jump, and I would say for the first 3 years, it was pretty rocky because it was like, is this going anywhere?
Right.
And luckily I was watching the kids at the same, or my first daughter at the same time. So it was less like, what are you doing with your time type of thing. But there has been tension because we started out with a double income when I was working at Habitat. So I don't know. And it all depends on like what your partner's goals in life are. Is your partner motivated by money? If that's the case, then it's going to be much harder for you to prove to them that your little venture in the niche market is profitable, because it doesn't make a profit for the first 5 to 6 years. So.
Yeah.
Do you ever run into the trope, and this could be within your marriage or with friendships or even like other mom group stuff, where like you're explaining what your life's work is and they automatically assume that it's just a great hobby, like that you're doing it for fun?
All the time. And it's frustrating and funny at the same time because it's so involved. So involved. And making a sewing pattern is extremely involved because you're creating a piece of publication. It's not a blog post. It's not like jotting down some instructions and copying it through the copier. I have an editor. I have somebody that looks over all of the drawings that I do. I do my own digital art. It's a whole big thing. And I have to make the patterns, figure out how to scan it in, how to size it. There's just so many weird working pieces to it. And then making sure that the printers can print it.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of things. And so they're like, oh, wow, you're a seamstress? Oh, can you hem my pants for me? Can you make me this Cinderella costume for me as an adult for $50? And you're like, sorry, that's not the stuff that I do.
There's a new TikTok song going around because I follow a lot of small businesses on TikTok, and it's like, it costs this much because it takes me fucking hours. And I don't do anything that takes me fucking hours, except for maybe this podcast. But every once in a while, I'll just be like singing it while I'm doing something. I'm like, I don't make any money off of my hobbies, but I get it.
Well, and it's a dangerous world too if you monetize your hobbies, because you end up hating it. I mean, once I went to college, I was a pianist for so long. And then I went to college and this is the thing that's going to make me money, you know? And then I was practicing for 4 to 8 hours a day, and it was just drudgery. It was horrible. And I still like piano, but I was starting to hate my instrument. So I was like, well, F this. I'm going to go a different route. Let's do something that I actually enjoy here.
I forget, how involved is your husband involved in the costuming world because that was something you always had in common, or was it something that he learned to have in common with you once you were dating or married or things? Because he goes to events with you and dresses up and things, right?
Right, yeah. So he is into costuming, but not historical costuming.
Okay.
If that makes any sense. Actually, when we first were getting to know each other than our, at the time, exes, we bonded a lot over how dysfunctional our exes were. And at the time we were both dating said people. I was married, and he was dating his ex-girlfriend. Aside from that, the sad parts, we would talk about costuming because his mom taught him how to sew. She was a quilter. She made all of his costumes. She made tons of things for him. And so he's actually participated in the making of some of them.
Oh, that's nice.
All right.
But yeah, to finish that thought, we have gone to several events together. He is most interested in looking fancy. So, and if you've ever seen my husband, if ever we go out somewhere where, like, he wants to look nice, he's wearing a shirt that I made him. Aww. And these shirts, for every, like, holiday or whatever that would require usually a gift, he buys fabric that I make him a button-down shirt for.
Yep.
And so, like, he's got all these fun shirts that I've made him, which is, it's nice for me to see something that I've made be worn and loved all the time. But they've got, like, zebras or sloths on them. He has so many different prints. I have a whole bin of fabrics that he has bought for him. And he just goes through for the next thing and says, I'll take this one for the next gift.
Cool.
So I don't have to worry about buying him anything. But he likes how he looks. And he wants to look fancy when we go to historical things. So that does require a little more work for me, but I think it's fun because it's a challenge. So, yeah. It's a weird world, the historical costuming community. It's made up of all kinds.
Dina, do you have any questions that I'm steamrolling over?
Well, I'm just curious, like, this whole costume thing, you said it's a weird community. Mm-hmm. What is it even like? Like, I can't even imagine what it's like.
It's mostly white women. And, like, I only say that because there's a lot of drama happening right now in the historical costuming community relating to BIPOC and white people and how historically, white people have worn these fashions. White people have worn the extravagant things. And now, you know, people from the BIPOC community are coming out and they're saying, like, we want to be part of this too. Stop keeping the historical tropes of your colonialism, because that really is truly what it is. Mm-hmm. So it's starting to become more diverse, which is great. But you have also people on both ends of the spectrum of authenticity, too. There's people that are there just to be in costume. There's people that are there that made their own costume and are proud of it, but they have no idea that it's actually historically accurate or not. And then you've got people more like me, where I don't look at other people's stuff and judge them for what they're wearing. But for myself, I want it to be as accurate as possible, so I do the hand stitching, or I make it on an antique machine, or whatever. And so you've got both ends. And at a reenactment, you see all kinds. And I'm more part of the costuming community rather than the reenacting community. But my business makes stuff for both.
Interesting. So. Well, do you think that it being predominantly white women,
yes, very white.
that there is some racism involved, you think?
Definitely. Especially when men are involved. So, when you go to a reenactment...
We're all surprised right now.
Yeah, I know. That's what you see and hear when you go to a reenactment. It's usually those of the male. Oh my gosh, it's so distracting, because you'll go in a lot of historical, especially 18th century, which is that's my love. That's where I want to be. 18th century and Regency, so that's early 1800s. I'm sorry. That your breast, most of your breasts are exposed.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, that's just the fashion, or they would put some sort of kerchief over for daytime, but you're still noticing that women's breasts are prominent in that fashion. It's not like later where butts are the thing, like in the 1880s. So when you go to a reenactment, especially if your clothes fit well and if you look all put together, you have people grabbing you. You have people, and this is audience-wise, like random people that are just walking around the reenactment, not in costume. And then you have some of the reenactors that are really gross, nasty, misogynistic people.
Great. And they're using it as an opportunity to go back in time.
And they'll call you a body wench and say, oh, your bosoms, and blah, 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 and go on. And it is sexual harassment, but they're using history as a guise to be able to do it. And it happens the same, and I would argue probably worse, for anybody that is a person of color.
Wow.
And like, I'm very pale, I am very white, and I have never had to experience it in a reenacting setting as a racism thing. I have had people, because I have really dark hair, very small eyes and I'm very pale, some people have asked me if I was Asian, but that has been separate and weird, like just an odd instance, and it's happened all my life. So I've experienced a little bit of that, like, curiosity that I know a lot of BIPOC people have, where people are like, so where exactly are you from? And you're like, well, my people are mostly Irish, I think. But yeah, I know that the BIPOC community experiences it to a huge level, because some people that are interested in historical accuracy, or say that they are like, would somebody of your background be wearing something like this in the 1870s? And it's like, that's none of your fucking business. Why
Fuck
is that
guy.
a thing? So, yeah, there's a ton of drama right now in the historical costuming community, surrounding all of this in Juneteenth and lots of different things. So it's kind of treacherous waters, because now we're starting to look at it with a much more critical eye, and looking at the actual global implications of me wearing this garment. You know, it is a costume, and sometimes, you know, you don't think about the fact that the garment that you're replicating was made by somebody that was paid pennies.
Yeah.
Or the fabric that they made was exploitations of slave labor. And the same goes for, you know, fast fashion today. So there are lots of very interesting parallels. Most of it is sad. But the historical costuming community specifically looks at the costumes and says, I want to make this beautiful thing. And I'm guilty of it. Everyone in it is guilty of that. But, now we're starting to look at it with a more critical eye, which I think is really important.
Yeah.
And yeah, so
Yeah.
right now my brain is reeling with like
No.
all the different things that are happening, and how I can better myself in the community, how I can help those that don't have as loud a voice as I do, or as many followers on Instagram, how I can do those things as a white woman right now is mostly what my brain is churning with, and how to be the most effective for good change. So
There we go. We love that.
There's just a lot.
There's so much. Yeah.
And we haven't even talked about men.
No.
All that much.
I mean, we talked about racist and misogynist men, so, like, gold met. Like,
That's true.
We
That's
barely
true.
tolerate them. What are some ways that you feel unsupported as a woman who has children and a home life, but is also running a business?
Well, okay, so I'll look at it in two different camps. So first we'll look at it as just a married person with two kids. We moved, so originally we were living where you guys were, or are,
Yep.
and then we moved right before my first daughter's birthday, her first birthday. It was her birthday weekend, I think, that we were officially in our house. And, since moving here, I have had no family support, like regular family support, because they live 2 hours away.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't know anybody here. And as a mom, if you are also running a business, it means you're not leaving the house. Because all of your time is either rearing the kids, cleaning the house, doing the business. There's no time for anything else. So I fell into the trap of not going to mom things, like not taking the girls to the library for reading day, because it was too important at the time for me to be at home to be doing and making the things to make money. Mm-hmm. And part of me regrets a little bit of that, just because I was so focused on this end goal, and I don't know that my time then, when she was so young, I don't know that it actually helped. You know what I mean? Like, because it took me so long to figure out what's the passive income that I want to continue with.
Right.
So, finding childcare, I hope neither of you ever have to deal with the childcare situations that are up here, because it's so expensive. Like, and I understand they're dealing with your kids, but it's just so prohibitively expensive if you make less than like $20 an hour.
Right.
So that's why I'm staying home. Like, I'm staying home not actually by choice.
Right.
It's more by necessity, because we knew that we wanted to raise kids. They didn't have to be our biological kids, but since we were able to conceive, we decided to go ahead with it. And now we're here, and finding, like, I've messaged so many people, like, hey, is there an opening? What are your rates? Can you watch my kids for 3 days a week? And they're like, well, no. Or they ghost you and never reply. So the childcare is really, really hard to procure if you don't make a lot of money already.
I'm convinced it's still part of the system to keep women at home, that we could fix the childcare, like, rates and all of it, make that more publicized, and yet we refuse to.
Right. Yeah, it's all just, it's very frustrating, because the system itself is not set up for small businesses to thrive. It really isn't. The way that things are going, it's all, if you start out as a big business, then you have a good trajectory. But if you're a small business, eat those crumbs, baby. That's all we got for you.
Basically, yeah.
So, yeah, those two things combined, I know, and I feel bad for a lot of moms that have asked me, like, oh, I want to do what you do, because the perception on social media is that, oh, things are rosy. She's doing great. She has a business that she's keeping her family alive on. And it's like, no. Nope. Last year was the first time that I even came close to making it, like, to having an even expenditures and profit coming in. Mm-hmm. So, like, I almost got there. And this is year number 5. And I don't sleep.
Damn.
So I feel bad sometimes when they ask me, like, oh, I would love to do what you do while I'm at home with the kids. And it's like, well, you have to view yourself as a working mom. You have to know that you're going to have somebody watch your kids somewhat often, at least once a week, to be able to just get stuff done. Because if I'm working all the time, I can't get to the house stuff all the time. You know, there's a reason why, like, the spheres worked, I guess, well for so long, as long as it could, where one partner stays home and the other partner works. Mm-hmm. Because running a household and making sure your house is as clean or happy as you want it to be is a full-time job if you've got kids. So,
and I'm curious, does your husband see it the same way as you, as like you are a working mom and all that? So
only since this year. So
okay.
So yeah, it's mostly been because I, at the beginning, was doing a lot of traveling to different reenactments, trying to get my name out there, and that cost money, and I wasn't making any money, so it was costing him money.
Yeah.
So at that point, it was a very different situation where it was kind of like, well, you're watching the kids, but you're still costing money. And your business is supposed to be paying for your hobby, right? And it wasn't working out that way at the beginning, because you got to pound the pavement. You got to invest at the beginning. And I started with nothing, you know? So now, since the patterns have started, that's when the trajectory took off. And when we saw what I made in 2020, that's when it was like, okay, like, this is actually going places. And I told him, I said, we have to view this as I'm a working parent. Even though it's part-time, I'm still working. I'm still making something and rearing your kids at the same time. So we have to look at all of our responsibilities at the house differently. Because otherwise it's just going to fail. And I don't want to have put this much time in it for a failure. Right. So
how has that adjustment gone?
Oh, God. My husband is a very nice man, and my husband is a very thoughtful person. However, and I'm speaking quietly because I think he just came home. I don't want him to think that I'm talking major shit about him, but it has been very, very trying for him to get over that, because I am a person that really wants to make other people feel good. And so what do I do at the beginning of each week? Hey, honey, what meals would you like this week? What desserts would you like this week? And since the beginning, I've basically just showered him with whatever he wanted. I spoiled him. I did the shittiest thing to myself. We started out with a really, really high expectation.
Oh no. Oh no, so, you played yourself.
I did. And so every milestone that we've had, because we lived together before we got married, every milestone that we've had has been a cha-chunk, like expectations lowered. Cha-chunk, expectations lowered. And having kids on a single salary and me still investing my money into the business has not been easy. And medical expenses have gone through the roof. Our insurance isn't the greatest. So this year and last year were extremely expensive because I was going to the doctor all the time. I had a huge baby and she wreaked havoc on my body. So, yeah, like I think it's circumstantial. And I think that if I wouldn't have started out making him feel like the world was hunky-dory and that he had found his unicorn, because I wanted it to be that way. I had an ex situation that was total shit. And when I came into this, I was like, everything is rainbows. And so I made myself into a unicorn. And then I was like, shit, why did I do that?
I regret everything.
Yeah, totally.
But I honestly don't think that situation is like unique to you and your husband. I think husbands, from what I've gathered and what I've observed as a single lady on the outside who kind of gets to do all of these little case studies on everyone's marriage, husbands have a really hard time adjusting to being your only priority, wanting offspring so their line continues, and then actually having to watch you give a shit about your offspring.
Right. Yes.
A friend of mine was having an issue with it on Friday, and I was like, well, this is why female gorillas keep their babies away from male gorillas. Males can't handle it when children enter the picture.
Yeah, and I can say that with full certainty. Yeah. That's definitely some of it. Now, my husband is very hands-on. He loves hanging out with our kids. However, like, his expectations of dealing with the kids are very different than mine. So mine, I am trying to get my kids to be as self-sufficient as possible. And I have talked myself into thinking that this is the best thing for them because they can fend for themselves. He knows where the snack bin is. So not only is she learning how to grab her own snacks, but she's learning how to self-regulate, right? That to me is like, okay, well, it's also another thing I don't have to worry about.
You're pushing her out of the nest.
Well, and it's not that I'm pushing her out of the nest. It's just like every time that she seems like she's ready for a new responsibility, I give her one. So, and it's not chores. It's just like, okay, like the biggest thing recently has been to wipe her butt on her own and she's 4. So to wipe her butt on her own, which has been great that I don't have to do this anymore. And,
hold on. I just straight forgot that parents have to take care of shit. Like, I just straight forgot that you have to wipe your baby's ass.
And
wow, how disconnected I am.
Some kids won't wipe their ass until they're like 10. And kids go through this whole stage where they refuse to poop. I'm convinced it's every child.
Mine haven't been that way yet. So.
Oh, thank goodness. Because you have to, like, sit there and, like, help them with, like, snacks to be like, you're not leaving the toilet until you take a shit.
God,
here's your iPad. Forgot. Here's a coloring book. Here's M&Ms, but you cannot leave until you shit.
And fingers crossed they don't develop hemorrhoids.
Right.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, she's 4, and she's wiping her butt now. She's gonna hear that she's talked about on this podcast when she's 20 and be like, oh my God, Mom! But yeah, and she's now brushing her teeth fully on her own. So what we've been doing was she would brush her teeth and then I would check them. So I would look at it and just like do boop, 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 and make sure that all of the gunk was out. And then she would do it because she wants to be independent. So I'm trying to give her things that make her independent and also make her feel like she owns herself.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it's really shitty to go through life thinking, I can't do anything because no one will let me. And I'm capable. Because all kids are capable of stuff.
Right.
But you just have to nurture them to go the right way. Right. So, anyway, I've talked myself into like, oh, well, if they are self-sufficient, if they are independent, that gives me time to do other things. So I'll push them to like, go play on your own. Go play outside. We have a fenced-in backyard. Go play outside for 10 minutes. You can't come in until the bell rings or whatever. And then I go do something. But when my husband watches them, it is him on the couch or him on the computer or him playing his video games because he's a gamer while they're around. So like it's not.
It's a very passive.
It's a very passive thing. Whereas I'm like, okay, all right, they're doing a thing. I've got just enough time to scrub the toilet. Or I've got just enough time to go clean the kitchen or make a thing or prep something else. So for me, it's like constant juggling. And then my husband is just like, yeah, this is fun. Playing a video game.
You can tell me no, and Dina will cut out this question. Can you explain to Dina when you had to write lesson plans for your husband on how to watch your children?
I'm sorry.
Yes.
What?
Okay. So, my first daughter was extremely easy. And I don't care if you keep this in the episode. My first daughter was extremely easy, right? She created her own schedule early on. It was easy to go with. She's always been articulate. She's always been very clear about what her needs are. And she's always been self-sufficient. So when my second one came along, it was like, he didn't know what to do. Because now we had not only one kid, but two kids to juggle. And my second is very needy. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, we were sitting down and I had this like schedule in my brain of what things happen when people take naps and, you know, all of this. And he would just be like, well, I don't know what to do. And I'm like, yeah, feed them. You let them sleep.
Make sure you feed them.
You wipe their butts.
There were also like enrichment activities. Like you had to teach him how to play with the older one so she was stimulated enough throughout the day to go to bed. Because she was having like, I don't want to say that they were anxiety behaviors, but she was having behaviors during quarantine.
Yeah, and I mean, there were lots of things that contributed to that, but the biggest being that she had somebody else that was taking her attention away from her. So I had to come up with, and I was so pissed off that I had to come up with this. And I told Natalie all about how pissed off I was, because I created an hourly thing from the time that they wake up to the time that they go to bed, every hour what to do.
She wrote sub-plans. She wrote substitute plans because she had to go do a thing, and the sub-parent was coming in.
So pissed off that I had to do this. And I think it was followed for 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm. And
that's the thing. Like, usually in a partner situation, both parents aren't the nurturers, right? And you usually have one person in a relationship that is better at multitasking than another one. Yeah. And I laugh every time that my husband says, oh, I wish that I could be a stay-at-home dad. And I just think nothing would ever get done. This house would be horrible because I wouldn't clean. If I was the one bringing home the money at that point, I wouldn't want to spend all of my free time cleaning. I would help, but I wouldn't do it the whole time. So,
you know what's frustrating? Like this is so frustrating to me that like men just think that the women know how to do these things. Like, I mean,
like we took a class,
right? Yeah. Like you just try, or you do research and figure out what you need to be doing. Like, and we let men get away with. I'm sorry, I'm about to rant, but we let men get away with so much because you can't Google how to take care of a child. I fucking can Google how to change a tire if my tire is broken. Like,
I was on the other end of the phone, Dina, telling her, I was like, get him a teachers pay teachers account. Like, have them just, like, download coloring sheets.
Like, why are they allowed to not put in the same level of effort that we do in understanding things and becoming a good parent and, you know, being involved in all these things?
I think that because it's such a one-track thing from the time that they're little, it's expected that they're going into some one-track career, and they never have to think about anything else. So they don't learn the critical skills of how to juggle things. And I have met several men that are good at it, but for the most part, they're taught from such an early age that, like, you only have to worry about this one thing, honey. And I know that, like, with my brother grew up being coddled because he was the youngest, and he was also a clingy child. And so that was fed into. And when it came for him to decide what to do, my parents made a path for him, and he tried to follow it, and then didn't do what he had set out to do, and then kind of spiraled where he was like, well, I can't deal with, like, I have to have a job while I'm going to school. Like, and so he could only choose one. Like, he could only handle one. Right. So it's I really think that because they're taught that way, and girls are expected to, you know, through the day, if we have a period, you have to learn how to, like, multitask and know when is my tampon full. When, you know, like, it's just little things that we have to deal with anyway. Mm-hmm. Just as part of being female, that you kind of learn how to do the multitasking and whatnot. But yeah, the Google thing is really frustrating because you think, like, come on. Well, just look up stuff that you like to do. I don't care if you play video games with the kids. Like, just make sure that it's limited to a certain amount of time and spend time with them. And things are better now because both of the girls are more active, and they're more reactive too. So it's more of a mutual playing now. But when we had the baby, the second one, that was really hard because she just wanted to scream. You know? Yeah, and there's only so much that you can do with a screaming baby and maintain sanity. So I think that pigeonholed him a little bit, and he was afraid to do anything wrong, which is an excuse that I hear all the time. I didn't do it because I was afraid I would do it wrong. It's like, I would just be appreciative of you to do it.
You're right.
Right. Even if it was incorrect.
But yeah, early on when I was little, she wanted to fold towels. And so I was like, well, sure, you can help. This is learning experience for the better. If she learns how to fold towels early on when she's little and is empowered to fold these towels when she's little, then she will help me, hopefully, and enjoy it and want to participate in it. So I'm letting her do this, and then another friend of ours couldn't handle her daughter also wanting to fold towels, who was very capable. But at the beginning, they're not going to do it right.
Right.
You have to be patient and know that they're going to do it. And, you know, I didn't refold her towel or her washcloths when she did it. I was glad they were done.
Teaching her that it wasn't good enough.
Right. I was just happy that I didn't have to do them. And it kept her like, occupied for a while. And afterwards, she was like, look at what I did, Mommy. Aww. And you're like, oh, that's great. Like, thank you so much for helping, because you want to nurture that. Right. You don't want to squash that spirit. So, I've always thought it is sad when people don't, like, hey, have your kid participate in what you're doing. I let her help me bake. Right. She can make a mean pecan pie. And, like, she's 4.
That's awesome.
So, like, I don't know. The whole thing of having your kids involved in everything you do, that's also some of the reasons why I'm able to do what I do. Right. Is that they're involved with it. And I understand that sometimes I have to go back and do it again. But isn't that part, why did you have kids in the first place if you're not going to make them into valuable human beings?
Right.
You know?
That's the goal here.
So, I don't know. With men, there's less of an emphasis on that, and it pisses me off.
Yeah.
So
I understand.
Can you talk about some of the feelings that come up, maybe in your husband in particular, or just men in general, or even women that you encounter when it comes to, like, what you end up giving up as a mother because you also choose to run this small business?
Like mom guilt and stuff?
like mom guilt or like even guilt that other people put on you? Because I know that sometimes not so great behaviors pop up.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's lots of ungrateful behaviors that come about with any partner, that seeing that your time is not being put toward the relationship. I personally am not a lovey-dovey person. I think it's because I'm so focused on the doing that I don't think about the rest of being. So I do work on that. I try at least, one day a week to have time with the girls, so I don't do anything that needs done work-wise on those days.
Okay.
And then I try and have 2 evenings a week after the girls go to bed where I just sit and talk to my husband, because otherwise it doesn't happen. And he's been on kind of wonky schedules too, so that's another thing. But the guilt that's put on me is sometimes with that, and that like, hey, we aren't seeing each other as much, and that makes my husband not happy. Whereas I would be fine without any of that emotional stimulation, probably for a month, honestly. Like, I would be fine just doing things because I'm self-sufficient and I can do things myself. Like, I don't need validation from other people. Actually, I get annoyed sometimes when people try to compliment or stuff like that. I'm just kind of like, I can see what I'm doing. I don't think it's that great, but whatever. Like, I'll make it greater later. So yeah, that has been interesting, and we've had other conversations with other women that are like, oh, well, we focus our time on spending time with each other. And I'm like, is that code for not doing anything? Because, like, I've got a lot of crap that I've got to do.
Right. Is that boning? Because, like, I'm almost here for if it means that you're just fucking each other whenever those kids are asleep.
Right.
But, like,
or even when the kids are around, they're like, oh, well, we focus our time on our children. And it's like, well, I do, like, my kids are always with me.
Right.
Even at night, I'm the one that wakes up with them because my husband is the heaviest sleeper in the world. He cannot wake up even if there's screaming happening. So I'm the one that goes up if somebody starts crying or if somebody needs something or someone falls out of the bed. I'm like on mom duty all the time. I don't get away from it. I don't get out of the house. And so there have been those conversations. Oh, you don't go to the library? Well, don't you spend time with your kids?
Yeah.
And
every fucking minute of the day.
Mom culture is so toxic. It is. We could have a whole other 3-part podcast on mom culture.
We need to have you toxic. And then my friend Stephanie, who did a episode with us earlier about, which hasn't aired yet.
Okay.
About raising kids during a pandemic. And like the 4 of us should just talk about like all the mommy bullshit. It's
so deep and it's so ridiculous.
Hate that.
And that's some of the reason why I don't hang out with moms.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to be part of a mom group for a little bit, and I was just like, Jesus, why are these the things that's being focused on, and why are all these people trying to pioneer these new ways of being a mom? Like, we're just trying to survive. We're trying to make sure that our kids survive, and that we're creating valuable human beings. I'm not gonna fucking coddle my kids.
No.
And that's what they're guilting me into doing. You know, they're saying, well, we spend time I play with my kids all day long. And I'm thinking, well, I'm really glad that I don't.
Stephanie also, like, brought up how even when you're a working parent as well, you're still always the active parent.
Oh, yeah.
And like, mom burnout and all of that. It's like, well, you get to go to work as a man who makes a little bit more money than me or a lot more money than me or is a full-time employee, and you get to be at work.
Right.
If a kid starts bleeding, like, my friend gets, like, 8 phone calls a day that someone may or may not have hit their head. And she's like, are they wobbling while they're walking? Like, honestly, like, I don't, like, need to know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's you're never off. And it's very tiring. And we just went on vacation. Well, kind of vacation. I don't really consider. We got out of the house. We went to Kate, who I did the other podcast with. And we went down to her house. We went all the way to South Carolina just to be out of our house. Because it's really hard to find other people that are willing to put up with your kids. Because no one really likes other people's kids. Like, let's be honest. Not many parents like other kids that aren't their own. There are very few exceptions, and I have found those few, I feel like. And those are the people we associate with the most. But it's very hard to find people that you also gel with on a parent level. Because the kids that your kids get along with aren't always the greatest. They don't have the greatest parents or the greatest living situation. And so there's like all of these levels to family things. And we haven't even talked about like couples friends.
Yeah.
You know,
right.
And that's been really demoralizing because we have thought several times that we have found like the unicorn family that we can be family friends with. And they are usually, because we live in a small town, otherwise engaged. You know what I mean? Like they've got other things, their lives are already going, and we're new here. So we're looking for someone to hitch to. And everybody's wagons are already going. So yeah, it's the whole thing has been, and it's harder of course during the pandemic, but the whole thing, there's just so many levels to try and get going at the same time that sometimes you really do think you're going crazy, because as the main caretaker of your kids, you feel all of that weight on you. And yes, they're making the money, the other partner,
right?
But you know, the money only goes so far.
No,
you also need a little bit of efficiency.
If you could hammer in one thing, like if we could microchip one thought into each man's brain when it comes to women who are also working, what would you want them to understand the most?
Just, I guess, share the load. Because it's not just like the things that you have to do, it's the things that you may have to do. It's, you know, the preparedness for the worst. It's, you know, making sure that, you know, you have thought of the things that need to happen, and that they also don't understand that there's a survivalness to that they don't have to worry about. Like, we have to worry every time we go to the grocery store, is somebody going to follow me to my car? That there's an extra emotional load that they don't understand. And there's only the spoons theory, I think, is a great way of illustrating that to people that don't understand, like, how, you know, why can't you do these things? And it's like, I only have so many spoons. And if you take one, and my spoons in particular are more of the to-do list, right?
Right.
So the regular to-do list, if my husband were to come and to take one of those spoons away and were to be like, okay, today I'm going to just put the girls to bed. Like, electively, just do it. Well, guess what? Now I have a spoon spot that I can put something there. You may get sex. That's a spoon.
You may get sex. That's a spoon.
Yeah. Or maybe that means that we can just cuddle and watch a TV show. If you take things away from the load, then there is more room for you. You know, and it's little things. It doesn't even have to be like, you know, clean the entire kitchen.
Right.
It's just take in and pay attention to what they're doing.
Right.
If I'm cleaning the kitchen, it's very helpful if someone comes up and says, oh, can I help you? Or just starts helping and just paying attention, or notices that you come in the house with a whole big bag of groceries and keep going in and out. Well, maybe you should come out and help me bring in the groceries. So, but that's all stuff that is out of the scope of what, you know, they think they should be doing. So
Amber, we end each episode with 2 different tidbits. One of them is a takeaway, the biggest lesson that we've learned from any of the men that we've tolerated. So yours would be focused on any man that you've had to tolerate during raising your children and working.
Okay.
And then we give out a positive message or wish manifestation. It can be to other women. It could be to other mothers. It could be to yourself. It could be to your husband or your daughters or anything.
Okay. Okay, so the first one was to a man.
Biggest takeaway.
Oh, yep. Okay. The biggest thing is that currently with most of the men that you have to deal with is that none of them are going to none of them are going to come to the expectations that you have.
None.
It's zero. This is why
I think that there might be some unicorns out there, but I think for the most part, the expectations that you have going into any relationship, with kids or regardless, they're not going to meet the most important expectations to you, especially if you don't talk about them. So there's a lot that's unsaid, and I mean, I haven't talked about a lot of my own shortcomings, which communication, because I'm so productivity focused, like I don't always communicate what I'm thinking, which creates issues, right? And so they can't know if you don't articulate it. And the way that men are being raised or have been raised is damning for them, right? Yeah. They are handicapped in a way. At least dealing with the emotional load and the load that we as women and caretakers have to deal with, or at least as the caretaker partner have to deal with. So I would say that definitely the expectations that you have for them, they're just not going to be met. Because
they haven't been taught to be,
because they just can't. Because they just can't. And
evolution hasn't been kind to them.
Yes, and hopefully as time goes on, they will learn how to deal with the things that are thrown at them, and be able to cope with it all, and hopefully to help you and share that load. And that's really what I hope, that through that communication that you can effectively get to them. Because the spoons, that was the one, I think, that was the light bulb, at least to my husband, was like, hey, this list means that there's a free spot there for you.
That's right.
Incentive.
And it could be whatever you want. Right. So yeah, that's a huge takeaway. And it's been very hard for me to learn, because I've been drinking whiskey this whole time. So as things have gone, I've gotten quite spirited, but yeah, it's been a hard lesson for me to learn, as well as for my partners, because both of my partners have had, major shortcomings, or at least shortcomings with me. So yeah, there's that.
And then your manifestation. So your overall wish for the men of the world, your husband, your family, anything.
I hope that the things that are done from the women, and I'm going to say all the men that I am related to closely, that they will understand the sacrifices that are made from women because of the load, and the emotional load. We also have to deal with their feelings, and men can't communicate their feelings as easily as men can, because they've never been taught to. They literally don't have that lexicon. So I just hope that they'll be able to be in life and able to recognize those sacrifices, and then decide how to help. Mm-hmm. Because just because they're providers, in most cases, men are the providers. Just because they're providers doesn't mean that means they can't help. That they should be helping. It's supposed to be a partnership. And that is going to mean that you don't get divorced.
That's right.
So
I think my biggest takeaway from this conversation tonight, and honestly, like every conversation that you and I end up having while you're working until 4 a.m. and I'm unemployed.
Those are such fun conversations, but I do feel bad that I was like yelling at you.
You got me through a quarantine. But I think my biggest takeaway for myself is that these societal norms that we've carried on since we got out of the caves are very much real.
Mm.
And they are very much still ever present. And as a woman who questions every day if one day she'll be a married person and pretty much knows the deal on whether or not she wants to be a mom,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's because I'm scared of those societal norms, and I don't feel like I'm up to snuff to battle them on my own, but I do feel like it's almost, and it sucks because we talked about all of this when it came to all of the other issues that happened during quarantine. It's always the disenfranchised who end up having to take up the cause.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that happens a lot with working women. It's like, not only do you have to carry a job and a household and a family, but you also have to be your own strongest advocate.
Right.
So my biggest manifestation for the world would be at some point, maybe during the class war. I just keep dreaming of the class war. Like, it's going to be fun.
Ready, let's go!
Right. Like, I'm always like, don't worry, everyone. The class war is coming. And they're like, it's not the ball pit at McDonald's. Like, it's not going to be great.
No, what you're looking at is the Russian and the French revolutions is what
right,
you're looking
at. And Russia never recovered.
Yeah. As we talked about at length.
We talk about it once a week, that Russia never recovered. But anyways, I'm hoping that at some point there is a cultural reset. I don't know if it's going to be my generation. I do have more hope for Gen Z just because they're ballsy as hell. That at some point we all take time to reflect and refocus our interpretations of the world. And we all start caring a little bit more about one another and what the fuck is actually going on around us. And I hope that changes for the better for small businesses, for women, for people of color, all of it.
Yeah.
Dina, do you have takeaways or manifestations?
I want to just like manifest to every man that they find the will to want to change the standards. Like, it's part of their responsibility to help change that. You know, don't be the dumb caveman guy that's like, I'm gonna go get the food and that's it. I did the thing, right? That's it. No, there's so much more. There's so much more. Like, be better than that stereotype. Like, I understand that they've been raised with literal not knowing any emotional intelligence whatsoever for the most part, but you can change that. You can be better. And wouldn't you want to be? I would imagine that you would want to not be the dumb caveman who no think. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Well, and honestly, like, I have a lot of empathy for men because they did miss a lot of that in their upbringing. But my God, I wasn't raised by the most emotionally intelligent people.
Right. Same. I mean, I'm having to relearn how to be empathetic, how to be all these things. Like, if we are trying to fix ourselves, I feel like the men should step up and try and do the same thing.
Right.
If I have to write down for my counselor homework 3 ways that I'm vulnerable every night before I get to go to bed, which means I have to plan out 3 different occurrences to put myself in a place of vulnerability, then I don't know, they could learn how to, like, hug other men without it having to be homoerotic. I don't know.
Or allowing themselves to feel and to be able to feel without it turning to anger. Because I think that because they don't have any of that, this is a whole other topic, and I'm sorry that we've gone on a tangent, but
it's okay.
If they were able to just learn to embrace the feelings that they have and to not just get angry because they're having them, then maybe you won't have such a tumultuous relationship with your partner, regardless of sex. You know? I know that I come from a family of very angry people, and it's mostly the men that are angry. The women are spiteful, but the men are physically angry. Like, they get a recent instance, I saw a member of my family get so angry over the smallest thing. And it's like, well, like, why is anger the first reaction that you have to feeling any emotion? And being able to describe it, which I think therapy is super helpful. Even if you don't think you need therapy, you probably should go just so you know how to like cope with things, right?
Right.
Just so, your brain, Rhett McLaughlin on Ear Biscuits, which is another podcast, was talking about how, your brain is a muscle. Your brain is a part of your body. Yeah. Your emotions are part of your body. It's got to be healthy too.
Yeah. We all saw Inside Out.
Yeah.
I didn't. What is this?
Oh, that was
it's a kids movie. It's a Pixar movie.
It's very meta. It's about all of the feelings that get to control your brain.
Oh, okay.
No, it's very meta.
Okay. Well, yeah, like it's frustrating on all levels that there's this wall that's put up. Yeah. And it's anger is all they see when they see that wall. So.
It's very interesting because in Inside Out, joy is the kid's main
emotion
feeling receptor who gets to like do the control panel in the brain, and in the mom's brain it's sadness, and in the dad's brain it's anger. And I'm like, because having children makes us sad, it makes men angry.
Yeah, because they're not getting what they got before, and also they're looking if physicality is part of what they value in a partner. If they're looking at the changes, they might be lamenting those changes. And it's natural to look at something that's changed and think and remember what it was like before. But to dwell on it and to think about it, that just makes them angry.
Yeah.
So
I'm telling you.
There's like so many levels of being a married person and then being, having kids. It's just
You should do your own video blog. And I know that Costumoms is supposed to be filling this niche, but you should just do a one camera video blog of a day in the life of a small business owning mother.
We both thought about it actually. And I think it actually might be a thing, just kind of talking through a typical day or a work day. I say in quotation marks. On just how to do it, because it would be eye-opening, I feel like, for a lot of people. Yeah. So that's called Costumoms, if anybody wants to check that out on YouTube. COSTU Moms is how you can find it.
You did a really great segue into plug. So plug all of your stuff. Where's everything that anyone could ever find? What if someone wants to take up sewing?
Right. Okay, so I just took a drink of whiskey, and it went down the wrong way, so. Whew. All right. Yes. So my stuff, if you want to follow me on Instagram or YouTube or my blog, that's all Lady of the Wilderness. So you can search that, and a bunch of things will pop up. If you want to check out my store, it's called Virgil's Fine Goods, virgilsfinegoods.com. That's how you get to it. There's an Etsy if you search Virgil's Fine Goods, all one word, without the apostrophe, without the apostrophe on the Etsy. And I do have an Instagram for Virgil's Fine Goods, so you can find out all the new things that are happening. Okay, there's the Costumoms. What other things? What did you mention?
I know that usually your workshops and classes are done through an event like the Jane Austen Festival or things like that.
Yeah,
so that was the only...
I occasionally teach classes. Right now, of course, they're mostly online. Well, all online so far. I will be offering them through my website here soon, but if you want to take a hair class, if you want to learn how to do your hair in a Regency style, I'm going to be doing, I think, 5 demos and talking about the history about it. For that's at the Jane Austen Festival. You can find that by searching the Jane Austen Festival, Kentucky, and that's in July, so it's coming up 2 weeks, I think.
This will not be out before then, but for future reference.
Yeah, so, I do different classes and things. Yeah, I also have a random Instagram called Gnome, GUH_NOME, which is all of my
gardening stuff,
gardening
right?
and homemaking stuff.
Right,
So-
because Amber actually lives like a pioneer woman. Like,
Not
envious.
exactly. I have a really fun garden plot, and the goal is to put all of my, or have all the produce that we have that comes from our garden.
I
Yeah.
felt
She's just
so
gonna-
fancy making a romesco sauce today.
Ooh,
And
yummy.
I bet you do that in your sleep. Like, I was like, I'm so
No.
accomplished. You probably grow it all. Get it all
she
from
does.
your
This
garden.
year is a pasta sauce year, so we are going to be doing a fair amount of pasta sauce.
Love
if
that.
I can get there during the zombie apocalypse, it's straight to Amber's house
Yeah,
because she'll
for
be
real.
able to feed me.
Well, the first thing that I'm taking is my seed box once that
Yeah.
happens. So
Just,
wherever we end up, I should be able to get us through a little bit. But I think that's all my plugs.
okay. Well, for us on our side, you can follow us on Instagram at Men I've Tolerated Pod. My personal Instagram is Natalie K124, as well as my TikTok, which is where I've started posting. Instagram has this weird deal going on with Reels where they cut the length of how long Reels get to be to 30 seconds, so you can't easily upload your TikToks to Reels. I'm on to it, and I know exactly what we're doing. So if you ever think that the Reels cut off funny, head over to TikTok and you'll get to see the entire thing. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our Instagram. Like and subscribe the podcast, write a 5-star review and a comment about what you're enjoying, and we'll go back to highlighting great reviews next week. And then don't forget that anyone who is listening to any episode, it does not have to be the most current, but tags us in their Instagram story, gets a special manifestation from the two of us in our stories, and we'll move you over to our We Love Tolerators highlight reel.
Ooh.
And then,
So
and then
fancy.
if you're still holding on to what I do in my free time when I'm not doing this, my art blog is at natalie'sinspiration.com. And then our Gmail for questions about your relationships or stories you want to share is at menI'veToleratedBefore@gmail.com. Dina, go for it.
And you can follow me on Instagram. My handle is at ms.caboose. So I'll have links there to all of my social media.
Sweet.
All right. Amber, this was wonderful.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for being
I had a
on.
great
This
time
is
talking
great.
to you guys. Sorry I'm so long-winded.
Oh,
No.
no, you're
We
fine.
listen, usually it's just us being long-winded. So now this is just a fresher for the tolerators. They're like, someone new. Great.
That's right.
Well,
That's right.
I listen to you guys whenever there's a new episode. I listen to you while I'm sewing in the middle of the night because
Aw.
because I miss
So sweet.
talking to my friends in the middle of the night when I'm sewing.
Right.
It's like we're there with you.
Yeah,
in
exactly.
spirit.
We had a friend tell us, like, he's a man that I've tolerated before, and he's been listening continuously, and he said one time, he goes, it's like I'm in the room having a conversation with you, but I don't get to talk to you. So it's like I'm sitting in a room with you, Natalie, getting to have a conversation with you.
We're just
Oh, I don't
listening
feel that
in.
way.
Yeah.
I love
That's fair.
talking to you, Natalie.
Thank you.
And to you, Dina.
No, I'm a recluse. Nobody talks to me. That's fine.
All right.
though. I'm okay with that.
Tolerators, remember, don't smile through anything that you find yourself tolerating, because smiles are for joy and joy only.
Truth.
Have a great time, everybody, and we'll talk to you soon.